Welcome to the What's Happening Birmingham video podcast.
This podcast is brought to you by the Jefferson County Department of Health. Hello everyone, this is Jarvis S. Scott with What's Happening Birmingham. Today I have the honor and pleasure, you know these two faces here in Birmingham, Jason and Kate Bushelon of Bushelon Funeral Home. Good afternoon, you two.
Hello.
All right, now how you doing?
Great. So my continuing series on COVID-19 and how it's affected our community here in Birmingham and the metro, all over the place, and pretty much I guess across the whole world, is just how it's affecting different aspects of our community. One of the aspects of our community is especially in the funeral home industry. So kind of take me back, Kate, March 2020, when you first heard about the news of COVID-19. What was your instant reaction and how you thought it was going to affect you all's industry?
Okay. So in March of 2020, we were hearing about procedures as far as washing your hands, keeping a little distance between each other. I was doing a little research online because I started noticing that my colleagues on the West Coast were starting to get cases of COVID. They were starting to get bombarded. Things that we hadn't heard of as far as the family couldn't go with them to the cemetery, things of that nature that were really out of the ordinary for the funeral industry. Then the NBA shut down. So that really made me take notice to that this is going to be pretty serious, and it would be probably affecting cases here in Alabama. Well, we will have cases here in Alabama. So started doing a little research, seeing what people were doing to provide protection for themselves, really getting familiar with the CDC website and seeing what they were saying. Then we started hearing about, we're starting to get cases. Here at the funeral home, we started reducing how many people could come in for arrangements, how many people could be in our chapel. And then the game changed again the week that we shut down here in Alabama. It shut down to the point that we could only have 10 people at services. That included the funeral directors and staff at one point. How we did visitations. Some people may have noticed when we first started doing our COVID procedures that only so many people could be in the funeral home at one time. We didn't really promote congregation because we really didn't know at that time how to keep our community safe.
Okay, so like Jason, as far as like safety of like, because you all of course have to deal with the bodies, was there any concerns about the safety that, you know, possibly you all could catch COVID from the result of handling the bodies, you know?
Well, I tell you, when COVID first started, I manage a funeral home and she manages a funeral home, so my hands was off on all COVID deceased. I was passing them all to her. They had a larger facility, larger staff, and they were willing to undertake the risk. I was, like I say, really afraid of it because Dr. Fauci didn't even know what was going on. So basically, we were offering direct cremations, which means that when the patient passes, we would go and make the removal, bring them into our care, get the necessary paperwork and authorizations done, and then go straight to the crematory. Or we were doing a direct burial, which means when the patient passes, we would bring them into our care, place them directly into the casket, and within 2 to 3 days, we would meet the family at the cemetery. If the family chose a more traditional method of funeral, whether it be a church, a graveside, or anything with viewing, like I say, I was passing them on to my sister, who was willing to undertake the risk. And also, like I say, we were just not knowing what was going on, and I was being very precautious at that time. But if I had kept on being precautious, I would be out of business by now. So we had to kind of, you know, build up the courage and tackle it head on. And from that point on, after a couple of months, felt a little bit more safer about it, and we started doing traditional funerals at all of our locations, which we have 3.
Okay, and Kate, like what you was mentioning, as far as like, and you know, I always like answer frequent asked questions. So once the body come in, and you know, we kind of talked about this before, does the embalming fluid actually, because you know, is the COVID still in? Well, I guess of course the person died of COVID, but by the time you do the embalming fluid, is it still? Is it or transmission?
The purpose of embalming is for preservation and protection of the community. But as of now, there's still not definitive answers on can living human remains catch COVID from dead human remains. It's just not known right now. So we still taking precautions when we know that it is a COVID case, or we treat all cases as if they may have COVID. We make sure that their faces are covered when we're moving them, because we know that COVID is an airborne disease, and they may expel something from their lungs that may affect us. We also always have our mask on and use proper protection equipment when we're making removals, while we're in the morgue, or even when we're doing visitations, just to be sure that we don't expose ourselves in any kind of way to COVID.
So as far as like, I guess we're gonna talk about this in the other segment. Like when COVID first struck, pound up, how was it affecting as far as like the normal amount of deceased people you get normally during the week? As far as like business, as far as the unprecedented, I say demand, but just spiking, able to handle that unprecedented flow, because it was just, when the pandemic first happened and the deaths just kept mounting up. Of course, you all's business, the more the better, but when it was just so much, did you experience a point where it was like a lot of, every week it was like more and more?
Yes.
Yeah.
At one point, at the height of COVID here in Birmingham, I would say we went from maybe 5 to 10 cases a week to maybe 10 or 20 cases, families that we would see a week. It became where there wasn't, in our culture, we usually have services on Saturdays. It was so many cases at one point that it was just whenever the next day that we were available to bury, and our cemeteries were also being bombarded with cases, so we would have to coordinate with them as well for burials. So we were burying Monday through Saturday. At one point, it really didn't matter about the traditional days of when we buried. Also, because you only had 10 people at the service, you didn't have to wait for your loved ones to come in from out of town and whatnot. It was just that immediate family that was going in for the service.
Okay, and like you said, Jason, you handle more like the embalming, cremation part, correct?
Yeah, we take care of everything from embalming to visitations to the cremation. But like I say, when we first started, we kind of centralized all operations to the location in West End, because COVID was something we didn't know anything about, and we didn't want to keep spreading to all of our facilities. So we kind of directed everyone who wanted a traditional funeral to the chapel in West End, and we used the North Birmingham and for the funeral services of non-COVID and direct burials, and we used the Gate City Chapel for more cremations, which were, like I say, picking up the patient, getting paperwork signed, and going direct to the crematory. We did see an influx, as she said. We went from our normal volume to double, sometimes 3 times that volume. At one time, we actually had 4 morgue facilities going. The 3 that we have, and another one outside the city limits, which we kind of, when one location was, overwhelmed, all of them were overwhelmed. We even had to step outside the city limits for storage.
Oh, wow. So I guess we'll get this to another segment. How long was it was kind of like backed up as far as like the bodies, like you said, the storage part of it?
It was a weekly basis. Usually in the funeral business, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you getting ready for Saturday in the African American community, and after Saturday, the process starts all over again. Everyone bears out on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. You picking up new deceased, new families coming in, and getting ready for Saturday again. But we were so overwhelmed that we had to work, as she say, in conjunction with cemeteries to basically schedule everything. And also, we try to service all of our families by reaching out to other funeral homes for assistance, but everyone was basically overwhelmed. So the families were good about working with us. They understood, especially, like I say, the cases where we urged direct burials. The family really understood because they didn't know what was going on also. But as time progressed, I'm not going to say it became a norm, but people were getting to where they still wanted to do a traditional funeral. So they wanted to see their loved one. They wanted the family and relatives and friends to be able to come in and see them. We even had people to want to know, how did we protect the public from the COVID bodies? And basically, embalming is the process of preservation and sanitation, and that's all we can do. Is in our power. So we can only do what we've been blessed to do, and tried to keep everybody safe. We urged everyone to wear masks, social distance. We cut the capacity down of the chapel to half. Even when we went to churches, the ones that were open, we worked with their staff, their ushers, their ministries there to see how did they want to go to make sure that everyone was safe.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed too was a lot of people doing Facebook Lives of the people's funerals. So with people before, if you didn't make somebody's funeral, now it's being more broadcast more and more because of the limits and things like that. What do you see now? Of course, we got another name of it. Now it's Delta, then it's Omicron. What do you foresee now that we get into the colder months? You think the business is going for you all?
Well, Dr. Fauci has actually projected that the levels of COVID will spike again because it's getting cold. People are more inclined to stay inside with their loved ones. You have holiday gatherings and whatnot. So basically, right now, I can see the things that came about with the pandemic, like the lives on funerals on Facebook and whatnot. I can see that being a lot more popular. Again, it kind of weaned off a little bit, but I could see that being a more popular way for people to have some closure with losing a loved one. I think that was the most important thing with all of the funerals that we had. No matter if it was through the pandemic or before the pandemic, people need closure. That's what a funeral is for closure of losing your loved one. So that is the new way of having closure, by going on social media to see your loved ones, family, and seeing the service. And some do participate via Zoom during the service. It just depends. But I do see that becoming a little bit more than it was beforehand, because people are a little bit more comfortable right now going to services, but I could see people kind of pulling back again when the numbers kind of spike.
Yeah, and every time the numbers spiked on the news, we could tell it before the news were reported. I mean,
oh wow!
Every time the phone rings for a first call, it would be a COVID patient, and you could tell when it's going up, and you could tell when it's slowing down.
Oh wow!
Even if it wasn't reported, I was still telling the people that I would encounter that COVID is real. Facebook, Zoom, all the different media outlets. I'm not the technology guy, but it opened my eyes up a lot, because that was one way we were able to let everyone participate. It went to more graveside services instead of church services. It was the belief that open air, like almost in the park, we were having cemeteries that would not even set up a tent.
Oh wow!
Don't even put chairs out. Didn't want anyone to sit, to congregate long. So we saw a different age in the funeral business. Traditionally, in the African American funeral business, we were used to long, drawn out church services. We would, if the church was open, it would still be no one there in attendance, but maybe primarily family. And it was even more scary is that a lot of times after we finished the services, we would get calls back from these families saying, hey, my cousin just made it back home to North Carolina. They tested COVID positive. We've had the children of the deceased come back and say, hey, I'm COVID. We've had double funerals where mother and son, mother and daughter, mother and husband, or husband and wife have all succumbed to the illness around the same time. So we saw some eye-opening experiences dealing with COVID, and it's still around. It hadn't gone anywhere. We're still serving families, not at the rate that we were, but it is still here around Birmingham, Jefferson County, in our metropolitan area that we service.
Okay, and this is a great segue to my second segment, because we're going to actually talk about the process. So thank you all for kind of talking about this topic. Thank you all for watching this video. Please check out what'shappeningBirmingham.com for more videos. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I'm also on Apple Podcasts now. Thank you all again, and stay tuned for the second segment.
Thank you for watching the What's Happening Birmingham video podcast. Please check out our website, app, or subscribe to our YouTube channel for the latest videos today.